I was markedly disappointed at many of the comments and the voice notes and the suggestions that the way we solve muggings on Table Mountain is simply by sending in the military. Just sending in the military, but to do what? And whenever we talk about crime, safety, the knee-jerk reaction from many South Africans is simply send in the military. And I think we've lost the imagination of how to make a marked dent in safety and security policing in South Africa. But I don't think a war on crime is necessarily the answer. It should be a war on poverty, a war on joblessness, a war on the very, very troubled social circumstances that we find ourselves in South Africa. Is the military is saying sending in the SANDF, is it the only answer to a country beset with crime and criminal activity? And should we not be looking at firstly improving a criminal justice system and then improving our communities? It's providing answers when it comes to jobs. It's providing answers when it comes to dealing with substance dependence. It's providing answers when it comes to family units and social units and community units in South Africa that have absolutely fallen apart. Dr. Guy Lamb is a criminologist, senior lecturer at Stellenbosch University, writing an opinion piece on how the South African Police Service's anti-crime strategy has failed. It's not going to take a quick fix quarterly, seasonally. It's not going to take a quick fix, even year-long anti-crime strategy. It may have to be looked at intergenerationally. Guy Lamb joins me now on the line. Guy, thanks so much for joining us. I can appreciate the frustration, the fears of South Africans when we're looking at statistics like in the last quarter, 7,000 people in South Africa have been killed in the latest quarterly results that has showed between June and August this year. 7,000 people have been killed in South Africa. So I largely forgive South Africans who simply want to throw the military in as an option to solve crime in South Africa. But I do think that we've lost the imagination on how we firstly talk about crime and how we'll deal with crime in South Africa. And that imagination has also been lost not only by us, but also the policymakers. Let's talk about the language that we use when we talk about the war on crime in South Africa, a war that we're clearly losing.
Well, it's been certainly conceptualized as a war going back to the kind of mid to late 1980s, where we had quite a surge in crime, and then it came down, and we're kind of experiencing a long surge at the moment. And it was sort of this idea around that we can defeat crime, that it is an enemy, that it's something that, you just throw policing resources, you throw the military at, and then you defeat it like you defeat an enemy. But I mean, the point, Lester, that you know as well as many other of your listeners know, that crime is, and violence is derived from a variety of factors, from homes, from communities, from the kind of social conditions in which people live, historical legacies, and so you can't just kind of throw a kind of an aggressive police and military at it and think that it's going to make a difference. Of course, it's not.
Over the last 3 years, we've had the last 3 decades rather, we've had the demilitarization of the South African police service, from a police force to a police service, a constant demilitarization of ranks and how police conduct themselves. But over the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years, we've had this remilitarization of policing approaches. Even the way they describe certain operations, Operation Chanela being one of them. That's the latest police operation to try and curb crime. But even the language that police use is this militaristic language and not how we should probably be solving crime, and those are social interventions.
Absolutely. I mean, the type of kind of militarized intervention can be helpful in stabilizing a situation, particularly when you've got violent crime that's out of control, or you've got sort of violent gangs that have taken control of neighborhoods, and you need to flood areas or saturate areas with police and military as in a way to kind of reclaim the kind of state's authority. And that's, prior to Chanela, the operation was Operation Fiela Reclaim, and reclaim was, reclaim the state's authority, which was openly declared. So it's the use of military language is this kind of sense of trying to demonstrate strength. trying to demonstrate that we can solve this problem. But in fact, it's, as you indicate, there's kind of many drivers, historical, social, intergenerational, that kind of drive crime.
We do have a trust deficit in the state in general, politics and policy in general, but police specifically. Only 27% of the South African population views the police as trustworthy. So how can we simultaneously not trust an organization, a state entity, to prevent and then solve cases of crime, but at the same time seek and ask them questions about what they are doing to seek crime and seek and find and eradicate crime when we simply don't trust the police?
I mean, it's a kind of a catch-22 situation we're in at the moment. It's around, the sort of thinking is that, a more aggressive police that kind of clamps down, cracks down on crime in a hard way will build legitimacy, build trust. But unfortunately, what it does is often results in abuse. It often results in excessive use of force. And we've seen a number of cases where police have been using excessive force, including from VIP protection to ordinary kind of rank and file police. And that kind of experiences of violence and, witnessing of violence by police tends to undermine trust in the police. And of course, there are problems around police corruption, which were exposed, through the Zondo Commission and exposed through media reports and investigations by journalists such as yourself. That undermines trust. I mean, what needs to be done is very much going back to the basics. It's about, trying to professionalize the police to be more professional in terms of how they deal with the public, to be more respectful in terms of how they deal with the public, which is, all well and good to say it. Being a police official within South Africa is an incredibly difficult job, almost a thankless job, and you encounter aggression and, anger from residents all the time. So it's very easy for you to lose your cool. But it's essentially a long, hard path if the police want to build legitimacy. It's about treating people with respect and being professional.
It's a violent crime experience that we're experiencing now in South Africa. 7,000 people killed in the last quarterly report. We're heading into a festive season where we see a higher consumption of people interacting, a higher consumption of substances, and we'll have a higher rate of particularly opportunistic theft, robbery, and more people being targeted. This is what we're experiencing now. But is the answer a quick fix? Or is the answer to South Africa's intergenerational trauma? Is the answer to our broken and fractured communities? Can it be fixed now? Are we expectant of it to be fixed now? Or are we actually having to look at strategies that would only bear fruit in 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years' time? If we solve unemployment now, if we make sure that kids continue and finish schools now, that we solve the issues of substance abuse, if we solve the instances of needing meaningful jobs, especially for young and marginalized men in South Africa, are we expectant? I think we are expectant that crime is fixed immediately, but should we be?
I mean, there's certain things that can be fixed in the short to medium term in the sense of bringing down violent crime. And, one of the things is in South Africa, we have a very serious problem with access to firearms. And firearms are driving murder and attempted murder rates, also involved in various types of gender-based violence as well. And there seems to be quite widespread access to illegal firearms and ammunition in high crime areas. And so this is where the police have had success in the past. It's around trying to confiscate and seize as many weapons as possible. And so those numbers have come down in the recent quarter. The police have been seizing less. So it's more around that this should be prioritized because the less firearms in circulation, the less injury and deaths happen. So in the sort of short term, there's those sort of things that can be done. In the longer term, government has a strategy. It's called the Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy. And it hasn't been implemented yet because it talks to the whole of government having to work together and cooperating with civil society and the private sector. Hard and it's difficult and it needs money.
Really appreciate your time. Some messages that I will reflect on. People forget lest how important the maintenance of open green spaces is in crime prevention. Think how often attacks take place in overgrown bushy areas, in subways that are not meticulously maintained. These are areas where particularly local government is failing us. Andre says, the war on crime cannot be fought with soldiers. It must be fought with teachers. A caring government will spend the money on taxpayers, on schools and skills training, not on submarines, jet fighters that cannot be maintained and used. I'll go further, Andre. I would say we don't need 1,000 more police officers in particularly areas which are prone to violent crime, gangs and guns. I would say we need 1,000 new teachers. We need 1,000 new jobs. That makes a meaningful impact. We need 1,000 more social workers to help deal with broken communities, to talk about unlocking the trauma of absent positive male role models in many of these communities. That's what we need. 1,000 less guns, 1,000 more teachers and 1,000 more jobs, 1,000 more positive role models, not necessarily 1,000 more police officers. But a quick voice note.
Hi Lester, Justin here from Weinberg. Possibly a solution, maybe that is to start with a gangster amnesty program, finding a way to bring out gangsters and informants to provide open information for possible reductions in prosecution, or some sort of period, like maybe a 5-year period where, if they come out, they provide information, they get protected, and some sort of arrangements are made. Thanks, Justin.
Appreciate the contribution, Justin. How about this? A 5-year amnesty period, but at the same time that runs concurrently, is firstly a skills audit period, so that we know those who are unemployed, what they then can do, what offers, what skills can they offer. And then after we have a skills audit period, we say, okay, let's direct you to job opportunities. And if there aren't any skills, well, we're going to train you in skills. I think that is also something that we can consider when we're talking about how to deal with a very, very complex issue around crime.